Hello everyone. This is just a quick little lecture on some statistics that you might see in AP Psychology. We're going to focus primarily on standard deviation. Just some extra review if you need to come back and watch this video a couple of times so you get the hang of standard deviation. You can pause, you can rewind, you can listen to it as many times as you want, just so that you can become comfortable with how the formula looks. Before we get started, know that there are essentially 5 different measurements that you could potentially be responsible for on the exam. 4 of those 5 I'm going to assume you've already been exposed to at some point in your educational career. Measures of central tendency, these are your mean, median, and mode. When we're looking for a measure of central tendency, think of all of the scores on a test or all of the heights of players on a basketball team. Think of anything that we are measuring, and we want to try to find what is the center. Most of the time, we look at things like the mean, your grade point average, for example, where we add up all of your test scores, all of your scores in class, and we divide it by however many credits, and we get your GPA. We're looking for that average, that's the mean. Median, of course, you line up all of the results, all of the responses in numerical order, and you find that middle. Whatever that middle may be. If there's an even number, then you take those 2 middle numbers and then find the distance between the 2. And then mode, this obviously would be the one that is most common. If you have 10 scores and you had one score that occurred 6 times, then we know that that's going to be the mode. It's happened the most often. Variance, we're looking for how much do these results, how much do these numbers actually vary. The common one that you've probably heard is range. So imagine a 10-question quiz. Well, the range for a 10-question quiz is 11. You think, well, why is it 11? It should be 10. Think, how many possible scores could there be? How much could it vary? Well, there could be 11 potential scores because someone could score a 0, a 1, a 2, all the way up to 10, which gives us 11 potential scores. If a 10-question quiz, the highest student scores an 8 and the lowest student's scores a 6, the range is 3. You could have a 6, a 7, or an 8. The problem with range is that with a few extreme scores, it can become very, very skewed. It can become very, very extreme. So if we have final exams and all the students are scoring maybe, let's say, in the 70s and 80s, right? We would have a range of, between 15 and 20, something along those lines, depending on the scores. But if we had one student who got a 10%, now our range becomes huge. That one score is influencing the range significantly. So another way to measure variance is what we call the standard deviation. The standard deviation is essentially the average distance from the average. Think about that again. The average distance from the average. So if we have a final exam, and on the final exam, the mean, the average, is a 75%, standard deviation is going to tell us how far away, on average, are students scoring from a 75%. So imagine it if this right here, our scores on an exam, and our average is 75. If I say that the standard deviation is 5%, that is going to tell us that the majority of the students are going to fall between a 70% and an 80%, assuming the standard deviation is 5%. You could have another class with the exact same average. They also had a 75% average. But if their standard deviation is 15, now all of a sudden, the majority of students fall in a much wider range here. Here, our standard deviation equals 5. Here, our standard deviation equals 15. Although both classes, we'll say Class A and Class B, although both classes have the exact same average, 75%, you can tell which class overall did better. If you're looking at which class overall did better, we have to look at this one. This small standard deviation tells us that there are more scores closer to this average. So how do we find the standard deviation? That's the part that can be somewhat tricky. Calculating the standard deviation isn't as tricky as it should be if you know the simple steps, and I'll try to break it down for you. Imagine we have 5 scores on a 20-question quiz. Someone got a 14, someone got a 15, a 16, 12, and 18. The first thing you have to do is you have to find the average. If you add up these 5 scores, you should get 75. Then to find the average, you just divide for however many people took the test. Which gives us an average of 15. That's the first step, is finding the average of the 5 scores. Once you've found the average, all you have to do is subtract that to try to find how much are they varying. Remember, this is a measure of variance. So how much do these 5 scores vary from the average? So we subtract 15 from our 5 different scores. When we subtract, we'll see that 14 is 1 off of our average. 15 here, this was our average, so it does not vary at all. 16, it is also 1 point off of the average. 12 was 3 points off of our average, and 18 was also 3 points off of our average. The next step, you have to square all of these. Once you square them, you get this, and then you have to find the average again. We add up these scores. This is 20. We divide again by 5, which gives us a new average of 4. You find the average, you subtract the average, you square it, find the average again. Now, there's only one more step. To find the standard deviation, all you need to do is have the square root of this number, of this second mean. In this case, it's very easy. This little sign here means standard deviation. It's equal to the square root of 4, which is 2. Now, on the AP test, if this number is not an easy number to square, or to get the square root of, then all they're probably going to ask you for is what the number is. So if this number, for example, came out to be something like 6 or 8, 23, then that's all they're going to ask you to do. If it's something that you can easily find the square root for, then they might have you find this number. If you're doing some multiplication and division on the AP test and you're coming up with weird decimals and weird numbers, you're probably doing it wrong. They're going to try to make it be nice and easy, nice and simple numbers for you. What does this number mean? All right, so we have the standard deviation. What does this number mean? Let's go back to this idea of all of our test scores. All right, all of our test scores, we know that we have scores ranging from a 12 to an 18, and our average is a 15. This means that the majority is going to fall within 2 points, that's our standard deviation, within 2 points of the average. So let's think about this. We have one that scored a 14, we have another one that scored a 16. 3 of our 5 scores fell within 2 points of the average, so it works. Generally speaking, standard deviation is going to be 34%, and so you have If you look at a standard deviation above and a standard deviation below, 68% of the scores should fall within 15, and that happens here. I hope that helps. If you're still confused, please stop by my room and I'll try to explain it again, and you can watch this whenever you need to. Good luck.